Most early learning settings in Thailand are either very traditional or they're very international. They're very usually British or American focused. And what we did at Sprouts, we looked at really the best schools around the world. While looking at all these different approaches, we realized if you want to make a good education for children here in Thailand, we cannot just copy something from America or England and paste it to Thailand. And we can also not just take something pure Thai, because that wouldn't suit the demands of a very modern family. So what we tried is we tried to bring the two worlds together and look at best practices really from the best schools in Thailand, but also some of the best schools around the world. We have 50% Thai culture and 50% Western culture or foreign culture. And we have 50% Thai language and 50% English to give children a really balanced but still very modern education. If you look at the rate of synapses formation inside the brain, you have the strongest rate in the language center at around 9 months of age. That means that a child's brain within the first 2 or 3 years of life has an immense capacity to get to know new languages. Some also call it a critical period, because if you don't hear or are not so exposed to certain sounds during that period, your brain kind of disregards them as important information. So for example, they have a famous study where they had a tutor come into a kindergarten setting and speak Chinese to children for just, I think, it was 8 weeks. And the tutor came only for 15 minutes. But it was during that period, it was actually when the children were just 10 months old. And what the brain does is the brain then opens up certain synapses and regards these Chinese tones as tones which are valid or important or ought to be remembered. And that helps the children later, 2, 3, 5, 10 years later, to learn Chinese much, much better. So we at Sprouts want to really focus on 2 languages simultaneously in the very early years. And for us also to push this in a very immersive way, that means that children are exposed to Thai in one activity and English in another. They're exposed to both languages at the same time, which also creates what we call cognitive flexibility. The children learn to switch from one language to the other very fast, which has big benefits also in other parts, not only in the language development, but also in general multitasking and coping or working with different chunks of information at the same time. So bilingual learning is really best to be promoted in the first 2, 3 years of life. And of course, I mean, kids are great language learners also later, but it's most effective in the very beginning. It really starts after around 4 weeks within the womb of the mom. And it grows very, very fast. It grows very, very fast until around 3 years. So by the age of 5, a child's brain is 95% finished. Now that doesn't mean that a child can't learn anything anymore. No, it can still learn a lot. But the brain itself, the foundation of what it can do, is pretty much finished by the age of 5 years. That means in the very early years, especially the first 3 years of life, parents as well as educators have a very big impact on how this brain is formed. One, and maybe the most effective way to assure that the brain is formed to have a very high potential is by exposing a child to different experiences very early on. And these experiences always ought to be social experiences. That means, for example, what a mom does with a child when they read a book, and it points out certain things in the book and tells stories of these certain animals or characters in the book. This is where the child gets really interested in the book, because it feels the mom being interested in the stories. And when the mom or the educator, teacher takes interest in something, then the children realize this is something of importance, something I ought to know. If, for example, you give a child an iPad and it plays a game, it might enjoy the game because the game is programmed in a way that the child enjoys pushing certain buttons, but it misses the social component, and the child doesn't understand how the learning it takes from the game relates to real life. For example, they have a very famous experiment where they play language instruction to children via a tape. And the children don't learn anything listening from a tape because they don't understand that the language they ought to learn from a tape is actual language. Our parents here, and most of them are from mixed families or have some international background, they turn to us because they want their children to learn in a very natural and holistic way, but also in a very balanced way. So what makes us different from many schools, we don't have a fixed framework. If you look, for example, at a traditional kindergarten here in Thailand or preschool in America, then you will see that most schools have a framework and they try to make every child to fit in that framework. So they, for example, would say every child ought to do certain things by the age of 2. Every child ought to be able to use a spoon by the age of 2. Now here, of course, we try to inspire the children to use the spoons and help them to learn, eat by themselves and do potty training and focus on all kinds of aspects and healthy habits, we call them. But we don't push a child which is not ready to do something. For us, the most important is that the child feels happy and feels at peace with their own character. And that means that we take whoever that child is very serious in their own personal demands and don't try to push a framework. So it's really flipping around what is the focus. Do we focus on the teacher who learned something and spread the interest from the teacher to the children? Or do we look at the children, the learners, those who ought to come out of here with interest, with curiosity, with a passion for their own development and their own growth, and look at them and see, okay, what do we want to do around them? What do we want to design around their own interests? We have a very focused team. It's a small team at the moment. We just try to hire the very best we can find. But it's an international team, so we have a great GM who speaks 5 languages and who was raised in Germany but is actually Thai. We have a fantastic Thai teacher with a lot of experience abroad but also in Thailand. And we have a few other people who bring in some international experiences. And then there's me and some of our co-founders who also help here in our center. So it's a very international team, but we try to balance again these two worlds. So we take the Thai values from our Thai teachers as well as the international values which come in from us as well as our international teachers together and try to make the best experience for the children here. So we started around 5 years ago when we studied the state of Thai education. And the reason why we did that is because in one of my companies I realized many of our staff, and some of them come from the best colleges here, really lack some critical thinking and also cognitive abilities. So they're great people, very fun people, great hearts, and very polite, very respectful, but some of the cognitive and critical thinking skills were really missing. So we looked into that and we made a research project out of this and promoted a survey on Facebook and also on YouTube. And we collected around 4,000 opinions from students who are at school right now. This was 4 years ago. And we asked them questions. For example, we asked them, have you been hit last year? Or does your English teacher makes you practice English? Or does your math teacher allows you to ask questions in class? And many of these questions are answered in a very surprising and negative way, unfortunately. So many children get hit. In fact, 50% of all children we asked said they got hit last year. Around 30% of the students say they are not allowed to ask questions in class. So we took that research and we published it on our website, but also through some of the newspapers here in Thailand, and also presented that research at the FCCT, at the Foreign Correspondence Club here. And we got a lot of feedback from especially parents, but also other teachers and research institutions. And we built this network of people who are interested to change higher education. Now, we from then onwards started different projects. We have an online school for teenagers, which is a non-profit project from us, where we teach them hands-on skills, for example, drawing or line sticker design, but also economics, critical thinking, learning how to learn. We have around 5,000 students who take these programs. Our other project is the Sprouts YouTube channel. We now have over 200,000 subscribers and get around 1 million views a month. And many of our videos are played in classrooms all around the world. So we have now teachers who use the videos to be played in classrooms, but we also have professors who play them in universities, companies who play them in meetings, and many students who use them to learn better. But we also developed an application for moms, because when you look at early childhood education, or actually in fact if you look at education in general, and there has been some really important work by James Heckman, who won a Nobel Prize for this. If you look at education in general and you invest $1, the most critical period to get the highest investment on this $1 is the prenatal period. The child within the womb develops so fast, especially the brain. Any exposure to even small toxins can have a lasting impact. So we realized if we want to have an impact in higher education, we ought to focus on the early years. My own child is 1 year old now. That means by the time he gonna finish college, if college still exists by the time, will be 2045. And so we really tried to bring education, or design the education experience here, which helps children, first of all, to be happy and confident with who they are, so that they themselves are able to really explore their passion and curiosity. Because once they learn how to learn, and they learn how to cope with failure and cope with change, and have that confidence and that trust in the world and the curiosity and the passion to continue, then they are probably ready to cope with some of these big challenges of the future. But if we now try to prepare them, let's say for example, to enter a Thai elementary school, then we maybe can do that, but they might not be ready in 20, 30 years. So what we did is we looked at all the best concepts around the world for early childhood education. We looked at the Green School in Bali. We looked at some of the best schools in America. We looked at Waldorf schools in Munich, democratic schools. We looked at educational approaches all around the world, but also in Thailand, visited schools in Chiang Mai, in Bangkok. And we thought, how can we give children who are born now an education which really fits to them of who they are? And that means that we cannot rely entirely on what is there in Thailand and what is brought in by international schools, because we believe that both approaches don't fully grasp a child's character who is born in Thailand today. Because they want to be really, really happy with their Thai part, but they also want to develop this very international mindset. And to bring these both worlds together is really what we do here. So we developed a new method which brings in both cultures in order to prepare the children and to have a fantastic time also right now.